A 4-year-old boy walked into the sunlight of a quiet South Australian afternoon and never walked back. His name was Augustus Gus Lamont. And tonight we return to a case that refuses to let Australia sleep. A case that has dragged an entire nation into fear, guilt, and confusion. Because after all the searches, all the theories, all the pressure, all the hope, we still don't have the one thing that matters, Gus. And the longer he remains missing, the more painful the truth becomes. Someone failed this child, maybe more than one person, and the world wants to know who. Gus vanished on September 27, 2025, from Oak Park Station, a remote sheep property surrounded by endless red earth, razor-sharp scrub, and silence so loud it echoes. He was playing near a dirt mound, no more than a few steps from the homestead where generations of his family have lived. His grandmother called his name around 5:30 p.m. 30 minutes had passed. There should have been a small voice answering back. Instead, there was emptiness, an emptiness so heavy it changed everything. The family searched for hours before calling police. They insisted they hadn't waited. They simply refused to believe anything was wrong. Because how could a child disappear in broad daylight on open land with no one seeing a thing? But by the time officers arrived, darkness had swallowed the outback, and with it the first moments that could have held answers. Over the next days, the search became one of the largest South Australia had launched in years. Helicopters roared over the property. Drones scanned the ground from above. Tracking experts studied the earth for the slightest sign. A footprint, a drag mark, a broken twig, something to prove that Gus had walked, crawled, or been carried through the landscape. Volunteers formed long human chains across hills and gullies. The Australian Defence Force sent personnel to help. The operation stretched across more than 47,000 hectares. And still, nothing. No clothing, no hat, no tracks, nothing that could show where a 4-year-old had gone. And for investigators, that detail has never stopped haunting them. Authorities early on insisted there was no evidence of foul play. They said the land was unforgiving. Children wander. Time moves quickly. But people struggled to accept that. You don't lose a child in an open field without a trace. You don't lose a child in front of a house unless something went very wrong. And that contradiction, that sense that this shouldn't have been possible, fueled the first wave of public panic. Once the ground search was scaled back after about 10 days, the online world erupted. Social media flooded with theories. Some were desperate attempts to help, others were wild accusations aimed at the family. And then came the misinformation, the fake photos, AI-generated evidence, fabricated sightings, false claims of items found in the bush, posts of a supposed blood-stained toy, posts claiming Gus was seen in a vehicle, posts sharing doctored images of search areas with arrows, circles, and dramatic captions meant to harvest clicks, not truth. None of it was real, but thousands of people believed it, and the damage was immediate. South Australia police were forced to speak out, reminding the public that none of those viral claims had any basis in fact. They repeated that there was still no evidence of abduction, no sign of an animal attack, no confirmed physical clue at all. And that uncertainty became the most painful part of the story, because without evidence, every theory stays alive. As pressure mounted, police made a surprising decision. They returned to Oak Park Station weeks after scaling back. They brought in new teams to comb sections of the land that hadn't been fully examined before. Investigators shifted the case into a long-term missing persons operation under Task Force Horizon. Survivability experts began modeling how far a child of Gus's age could travel under extreme conditions. Former detectives weighed in, raising possibilities the public had avoided. One expert pointed out that in such remote areas, wildlife, even the kind people don't want to think about, could play a role. Another suggested the vast land might hide evidence far better than anyone realized. But despite those theories, the family remained cooperative. There was no breakdown in communication with police, no red flags in interviews, no suspicion strong enough to justify any accusation. Yet online comments kept coming, many of them cruel, pushing narratives that tore into people already living a nightmare. Everyone wanted someone to blame, and households across Australia watched this family become collateral damage in the court of public opinion. Tensions hit a breaking point when a Daily Mail reporter approached the property. What followed turned into a national headline. The grandmother, overwhelmed and emotionally drained, was seen with a shotgun in hand. The headline exploded, but police later clarified the truth. She was using the gun to deal with a snake, a task that's almost routine on outback farms. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't a threat. It was life in the region where Gus disappeared, a region that doesn't give mercy easily. But the public had already run with the story, amplifying it into something darker than it was. Now, weeks later, the case sits in a painful limbo. Police Commissioner Grant Stevens announced that a fourth search is possible, depending on expert analysis. And that single statement reignited hope, but also fear. Because a new search means investigators believe there may still be something out there worth finding. And people want to know what changed. What new detail pushed them back to the land? What did they see? What did they miss before? At the heart of this story is a child who deserves to be found, and a family living through the kind of fear most of us pray we never experience. Every hour that passes raises new questions. Every day without answers tightens the emotional grip on the nation. Was this preventable? Did someone overlook something? Did online noise drown out the clues that mattered? Why did the landscape give nothing back? And perhaps the hardest question, how does a child vanish in the middle of open land without leaving a single sign behind? Tonight we continue searching for the truth, for the pieces of this case that still lie in shadow. In the next part of this investigation, we examine the timeline, the early decisions, the physical environment, the witness accounts, and the expanding theories that investigators are examining behind closed doors. Stay with us. If you want updates as they come, you can subscribe. It helps keep attention on Gus, and attention matters. This story isn't ending. It's only shifting. And somewhere, in the vast emptiness of Oak Park Station, the answer is still waiting. The investigation shifted in tone the moment analysts uncovered a detail that hadn't been highlighted before. Quietly, away from press briefings and public pressure, they reviewed the movement logs of everyone who was near Oak Park Station that afternoon. The records weren't shocking on their own, but one thing stood out: a short window of time when no adult could account for every direction they were facing or every sound they did or didn't hear. A gap just long enough to make investigators pause. They didn't call it suspicious, they didn't label it anything, they simply circled it and kept going. Forensic mapping teams reconstructed the environment down to the smallest rise in the dirt. They ran simulations showing how a child Gus's size might move when frightened, excited, or disoriented. Some scenarios placed him close to scrub thicker than it looked from a distance. Others showed him veering toward a shallow, uneven gully that searchers had walked past dozens of times. Those models weren't proof, but they reminded investigators that the land holds secrets even locals overlook. And that pushed them to ask a deeper question. Had the earliest searchers unconsciously followed assumptions instead of evidence? Meanwhile, Task Force Horizon broadened its scope. Detectives reached out to hikers, station workers, and travelers who had passed through the region weeks before. Most had seen nothing unusual, but one visitor recalled noticing an unfamiliar vehicle on a side road off the Stewart Highway, a detail they hadn't thought important at the time. The direction matched the route toward the station, but the description was vague. No number plate, no unique markings, just a model and color shared by thousands across Australia. Still, investigators documented it, because in cases like this, any detail that doesn't fit the pattern becomes a thread worth pulling. You start to realize how thin the line is between a vital clue and a useless fragment, and you understand why investigators stay awake at night wondering which one they missed.
While this work continued, digital analysts quietly reviewed the waves of online falsehoods that had drowned the case in noise from day one. They weren't focused on punishing anyone. They wanted to track how misinformation had shaped public perception. Some posts had reached millions within hours. Many pushed theories that sent volunteers searching in unhelpful directions. And officials admitted behind closed doors that public interference cost time, precious time. When a 4-year-old's life depends on clarity, confusion becomes its own kind of harm. You can see why they want viewers to stay grounded in verified updates. Emotional stories can draw attention, but attention without accuracy can lead to tragedy. The deeper investigators went, the more they questioned the earliest assumptions. No sign of a struggle, no sign of an accident, no sign of wandering. Cases like this usually leave something behind, even something tiny. Disturbed soil, a small item dropped, a mark on a rock or a fence post. Here, there was silence. And silence is its own message. It forces people to ask whether the truth is hidden by the environment or by someone's actions. A behavioral specialist brought in during the recent review offered an angle that startled even seasoned detectives. They suggested that if Gus had encountered an adult he trusted, someone whose presence didn't trigger alarm, he could have moved willingly, not out of fear, not out of confusion, simply out of childhood innocence. No one framed this as an accusation. It was a scenario built from logic, meant to remind investigators that trust can be exploited, intentionally or unintentionally. That possibility sits quietly in the background of the investigation, neither confirmed nor dismissed. As these theories expanded, officers revisited statements from everyone who was on the property that day. They weren't looking for inconsistencies to expose anyone. They were listening for tiny gaps, moments that once felt ordinary but now felt meaningful. A few descriptions of the timing didn't match perfectly. A few estimates of distance shifted with retelling. None of it proved wrongdoing. But in major investigations, small irregularities are handled with care, never ignored. Viewers following the story understand why every second matters. You can stay tuned for more updates because these moments often lead to unexpected turns. At the same time, environmental specialists returned to Oak Park with updated equipment capable of reading ground density at deeper levels. Their focus included areas earlier teams couldn't fully examine due to heat and terrain. Reports from that effort haven't been released, but insiders hinted that certain pockets of land showed anomalies, places where earth density didn't match the surrounding environment. That doesn't confirm anything, but it justifies another physical search. And it explains why the commissioner said a fourth operation is on the table. One detail that continues to weigh on investigators is the timeline between Gus being last seen and the moment the family realized he was gone. People underestimate how much can happen in 30 minutes. For a child, it's enough time to move far beyond a safe radius. For someone with harmful intent, it's enough time to act without being seen. For the environment, it's enough time to erase the kind of surface evidence search teams rely on. Viewers often ask how something so serious could unfold so quickly. The truth is simple. It happens more often than people want to believe, which is why staying attentive to these cases matters. As pressure grows, investigators remain focused but weary. They know the nation is watching. They know every decision is being scrutinized, and they know the family is carrying the heaviest burden of all. Officers have said privately that the emotional toll inside the station is real. Cases involving young children do that. They make you question your judgment, your instincts, your timing. They make you replay every step, wondering if you could have made a different call. Even now, experts involved in the latest assessments believe the case sits at a crossroads. Either the next phase of searching will uncover the first meaningful clue, or it may confirm that the truth has been hidden more effectively than anyone imagined. That uncertainty has created tension among investigators, some pushing for a broader search perimeter, others arguing for a smaller, focused approach. Both sides are trying to protect a child who can't speak for himself. As the story moves forward, the questions grow heavier. Who was near the property in those unaccounted minutes? Why did the land offer no trace? How did silence replace the laughter of a 4-year-old in such a short span of time? And how many people stayed quiet when they should have spoken? For viewers following this case, stay with us. Updates continue to emerge, and each one reshapes the path ahead. The search for answers hasn't stopped, and until they find what happened to Gus Lamont, the weight of this case will remain on everyone involved.